27. 27 is the amount of consecutive innings the Kansas City Royals just went without scoring a run. Took them 3 entire games to muster up 1 run. I'm Brandon Johnson. This is baseball. Hey, if you've been enjoying the show this season, please consider giving me a 5-star review on whatever app you're listening, whatever app of your choice. That would help me a lot. Thank you. Let's get back to the show. So, yes, 27. Royals managed to go 3 full games without scoring a run. Their offense just went ice cold. They also had a 7-game losing streak, which they finally snapped against the Washington Nationals. They beat them in extra innings and kept hold of a playoff spot. And I think that's what's interesting here is, yeah, the Royals have lost 7 straight, and obviously September, when you're in the middle of a playoff push, is the absolute last time that you want to go on any sort of skid. But I kind of look at it this way. You never once lost a playoff spot in that 7-game stretch. You obviously, the gap narrowed between you and other teams while you were on that 7-game skid. The Detroit Tigers, who were, one of the teams that gave you 3 of your 7 losses, ended up finding themselves with a playoff spot. But there's a lot of people panicking, and now the Royals snap their 7-game skid. Still have some concerns, obviously, about the offense, because while they did snap the 27-game scoreless streak, they only were able to score 1 run, and it was really off of an error. So still some concerns there. Pitching has been phenomenal. But again, never lost a playoff spot. Still have a playoff spot with 5 games to play. They are currently sitting in the second wild card spot. And really, that's what this episode is about, is let's see what's at stake for the next 5 to 6 games around the rest of the league as we wrap up this 2024 season. So let's see where we're sitting at the standings, who's in, who's out, and get ready for a good 5 games. So I obviously mentioned the Royals and their 7-game skid, and the Minnesota Twins, who are right there in the playoff hunt with the Royals, have fortunately been playing just as bad as Kansas City. So they are currently on the outside looking in. If the season ended today, they lost to Miami. So the way it sits right now in the AL Central, the Cleveland Guardians clinched the AL Central the other day. They actually just clinched a first-round bye and home field advantage in the ALDS with their 91st win. And it's looking like the New York Yankees are going to be the other team that clinches a first-round bye as well. They're currently 92-65, 5 games ahead of Baltimore. Both New York and Baltimore have clinched playoff spots. It's just going to come down to who wins that division. I'm pretty sure the Yankees' magic number is 1. I think they either need to win or Baltimore needs to lose, and that division will be wrapped up. The inevitable Houston Astros just clinched their division by beating the Seattle Mariners tonight. So playoff picture is really starting to take shape. Now, I don't believe Houston will be able to be a first-round bye this time around, so they'll be taking the wild card route through the playoffs. And I think for Houston, they've proved that it doesn't really matter how they get there, but they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and they're looking to go to their 8th straight ALCS this season. Obviously, they have bigger aspirations in winning yet another World Series, but always a team to watch out for in the playoffs. But let's take a look at that AL wild card a little closer. Like I said, Kansas City, Detroit have the same record right now, so they are technically tied for the second wild card spot, but the Royals actually have head-to-head tiebreaker against Detroit, so if it came down to it, Detroit would be behind Kansas City. Now, Baltimore is that top wild card spot. They're +4, or they're up 4 games, but they're, like I said, still, an outside shot of catching the Yankees. Not likely, so I think they'll be that first wild card team and get the chance to host one of those wild card series. But some teams outside looking in, like I said, Minnesota, who's been on a skid. Seattle has kind of crawled back into it. They're 2.5 out. Boston is 3.5 out. So 5 games to play. Not a lot of wiggle room. But if you're the team like the Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals, you have destiny in your own hands, which is exactly where you want to be right now. So really the name of the game is to focus on yourself and just win the games that you are playing. And to finish out the season, the Royals are currently in the middle of a series against the Washington Nationals, who have lost 88 games. And then they close the series against the Atlanta Braves, which could end up being a very important series for both teams trying to get into the playoffs. So we'll get into where the Braves stand in just a few minutes. But that's going to be a huge series for both teams clinging to their playoff lives. Detroit currently in the middle of a series against the Rays, who are out of it, and then they get to host a series against the Major League worst and looking to be the worst team ever, 36-120 Chicago White Sox. I'd like to think that Detroit will likely sweep that series, so I think Detroit is firmly in it. But let's see where Minnesota sits, just for the heck of it. They're playing the National League worst Miami Marlins right now. They lost 4-1 tonight, and then this weekend they're going to play the Orioles, which that could bode well for Minnesota because I think the division will be wrapped up by that time. The AL East, so I don't know if the Orioles will have much to play for unless they feel like they need to win some games to make sure they at least get the home field for wild card, but I think that'll be wrapped up by that time as well. But a lot to look forward to for the weekend with those series. But let's hop over to the National League. And in the National League, the Phillies have wrapped up the National League East. They pretty much led that from day one. And this is the first NL East title for the Phillies since 2011. And that was the Phillies team that had Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, Roy Oswalt, Cole Hamels. They won 102 games and I believe lost to the Cardinals in the ALDS that season. Sorry to probably bring up old wounds, but that happened. Milwaukee Brewers, they've clinched the NL Central. The Brewers were, a team that, maybe was supposed to fall off because the great Craig Counsell left Milwaukee for Chicago. Well, Chicago is 81-77. They ended up being 9.5 games back in the division. Obviously, Milwaukee clinched it already. And 6.5 games back in the wild card, which means that they are mathematically eliminated because there's only 5 games left. So overall disappointing season for the Cubs there, but congratulations to the Brewers for just being perennial playoff contenders and just continuing to be competitive and being a model small market franchise. But NL West, the Dodgers clinched a playoff spot. Now, they're not quite at a point where they can clinch the division because they have the Padres that have a lot to say about that. You have the Diamondbacks hanging around. Let's look at the wild card, though, for the National League. So, like I said, Padres, they held that top wild card spot. The Diamondbacks, who they can't win the division in the NL West, but They are firmly in a wild card spot. And then you have New York Mets, who, I don't think we're expected to do really all that much this season, who are one game ahead of the Braves right now. Like I said earlier in the show, the Braves have a very important series coming up against the Royals right now, along with the series that they're currently in. So let's look at some matchups for the National League to end the season. So I'm already on some Braves talk, so we'll start there. Braves, like I said, I've already mentioned the series that they have coming up against the Royals, but more importantly, they're playing the New York Mets, who are the team that is directly in front of them in the standings. So the Braves have already taken game 1 of a 3-game series against the New York Mets, so they have an opportunity, if they play their cards right, to walk out of this series ahead of the Mets in the standings. And the Mets head into the weekend. They go on the road to play the Milwaukee Brewers. Like I said, the Milwaukee Brewers have already clinched the NL Central. And technically right now could still be a 1 or 2 seed, but I doubt that will hold up. So that could bode well for the Mets, where the Brewers might want to kind of get their rotation in order for a likely wild card series where the Mets are going to be playing for their playoff lives. So they're going to give the Brewers everything that they've got in this weekend. So definitely important stretch. Obviously 5 games left. Everything's important. So kind of redundant, but I want to look at this NL West situation here, because I think most people thought that the Dodgers were just going to run away with everything this season, and they, not to say that they didn't do that, because they're tied for the best record in all of baseball with the Phillies, so they are meeting expectations, but we've kind of seen the Dodgers be that 100-game winner and win the NL West very easily, but really, for the first time in a long time, I think all the teams across the AL and NL have all been really close record-wise, from the top playoff team to the 6th playoff team, which has honestly made everything more interesting with everything being so close, because there's a lot of moving parts and, a little bit more excitement with each day that playoff spots are moving around. But let's talk Padres for a second, because the Padres, like I said, they still have a chance to win the NL West. The Padres are currently playing the Dodgers. Now, as I'm recording this podcast, the Padres are leading the Dodgers 2-1 heading into the 4th inning. Obviously, that could change as my episode goes up. But as of right now, the Padres, with 5+ games to go, could still technically win the NL West. But Padres would have to sweep the Dodgers to tie it, and then they'll play the Diamondbacks heading into the weekend, and either the Padres could be trying to wrap up the NL West division, or it could be the Diamondbacks and Padres trying to figure out who's going to be one of the wild card series hosts. So there's really going to be no slowing down for the Padres. And as I say this, the Diamondbacks are currently getting blown out by the Giants. It's 10-0 Giants in the bottom of the 5th. So not what you want if you're the Diamondbacks. Because not only do the Diamondbacks need to make sure they win games to stay in, but if they're not careful, they could find themselves on the outside looking in, and it could be Padres, Mets, Braves that end up being the 3 wildcard teams, and the Diamondbacks could miss out. Diamondbacks are obviously trying to get back into the playoffs and get back to the World Series and win it this year. But let me just go back through this real quick and say all of the current playoff teams if the season ended today. So in the American League, the Yankees, Guardians, and Astros are atop their divisions. The Orioles, Tigers, and Royals currently hold the 3 wildcard spots in the American League, Over in the National League, again, the current division leaders, the Dodgers, Phillies, and Brewers. Phillies and Brewers already clinched their division. And then the 3 wild card teams right now are the Padres, Diamondbacks, and Mets. And if you're MLB, this is exactly what you wanted when you expanded the playoffs to 6 teams on each side. Is you have 7-8 teams on each, the American League and the National League that are worth paying attention to right now, and you're kind of living and dying with every pitch, every inning, every game that these teams play. So this last month of the season has been incredible. I already mentioned earlier in the show how all of the teams seem to be pretty close record-wise, so there's really hasn't been, that one team that had everything wrapped up the second week of September. It's been, close, and every team's had to make sure that they win some games and try not to lose 7 games in a row. The Royals, did that and managed to somehow still hold on to a playoff spot. So before we get out of here, let's just take a quick look ahead to next week as the playoffs begin. Number 1, the season ends for everybody on Sunday. I'm pretty sure everybody basically plays at the exact same time on Sunday, so they can all finish around the same time. Off day for everybody on Monday, and then the wild card series gets going on Tuesday. Now, remember, the wild card series is best 2 out of 3, and the top 2 records out of the 4 wild card teams in each league get to host the entire wild card series. So there's no travel days or anything like that. It'll all be held under the top seeded wild card teams' stadium. And then Saturday, October 5th, is when the ALDS begins. So next time you hear from me, we will be talking playoff baseball. Since the postseason begins on Tuesday, October 1st, I'm going to upload, instead of Wednesday, I'm going to upload my episode on Tuesday, so it's out in time for the wild card series. But that is a wrap on the 2024 regular season coverage for This Is Baseball. Like I said, we will be back on Tuesday, October 1st, to just kind of recap the weekend, the final weekend of the regular season, and then take a look at some playoff stuff. Not going to quite get into what I have planned, but it'll be good, and I hope to see you there. Thank you for listening again throughout this regular season. I know we've got a long way to go with the postseason, but that is all I have this week. I will see you Tuesday.